When have you seen the real world hit a spoiled brat? I was a school bus driver in the 70s, during height of court-ordered busing, so I ferried poor kids to the rich side of town, then rich kids the other way. Lots of entitled brats, but one stands out. Super entitled kid, constantly defying rules. Eventually I caught him, with too many witnesses, attempting to set a bus seat on fire with his lighter. School officials were called. Hearing with officials and rich dad, and he's banned from all buses rest of semester. Dad offers to pay for the damage and quietly accepts the punishment. Then comes the surprise. Next morning when I arrive at 6 AM to clean my bus, regular task every morning. Rich kid and dad are standing there. Dad introduces me to my new personal bus cleaner for the rest of the year. He brings kid every morning and forces him to wash and clean the floors on my bus before taking him on to his school. By end of year, entitled kid is actually working hard and being friendly. We're getting along pretty well and I help him out sometimes so he can get onto school. Kid turns out okay when all is over. Good move by his dad. When my brother was in school he was horrifically bullied, and his bully was the most entitled little sh I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. His father paid for boxing practice, karate lessons, and other martial arts. This made him think that he was the best at anything physical. My brother isn't overly fond of sports, and prefers to read in the library. As the typical nerdy kid, he's a prime target for bullies. One day when the bully had cornered my brother up against a wall, my brother finally decided that he wasn't just going to take it anymore, but he strongly dislikes violence, and thus would not be fighting back. Instead, when the bully tried to punch him, my brother ducked. 3 broken fingers and a trip to the hospital later. The bully's father finds out what had been happening. All his extra classes training were cancelled. He had all of his electronics and games sold. And if he wanted to have a car, he would have to work for every penny himself. Spending $50 on food a day is not normal. College girl got cut off from her parents, drinking and not going to class, and had to get a job. She put on Facebook about how she's gonna go hungry and needs money. People offered her food and to make her dinner. She said that's okay, I just need about $40 to get through the day, I don't like to grocery shop. When I was working at a public library, we had a few local celebrities come in from time to time. Most of them were nice, but one had a real stick up his ass. He would complain about having to stand in line, and about late fees, and about everything else. We would just say sorry, those are the rules, or thank you for being patient, even though he wasn't. One day, he and I were apparently both having a bad day, and when I told him there was a limit on how many DVDs or video games he could check out at a time, he slammed his hands on the desk and raged. Do you know who I am? This is a grown man. Mind, I was a little college student who barely looked old enough to drive. I was sick of his low-key bullying, so I just looked at him and said, yes, I do. MRX. And the rules still apply to you. Which of these would you like me to put back? He was stunned. I don't think anyone had ever actually told him that the rules for everyone else did in fact apply to him as well. He was a little nicer after that. Not a lot nicer, but still. I used to repair trails for the Forest Service, and I wouldn't call anybody a brat necessarily, but we're all pretty spoiled when it comes to manual labor and sleeping on the ground. On day 1, the bush plane flies the crew out to a grass airstrip about 40 miles east of town. Then you shoulder your pack, grab an axe and a shovel, and start hiking up the canyon, usually in the rain, until you watch that plane disappear over the ridge. It's hard to imagine what you've signed up for. Hard labor all day every day, working, cooking, and camping in the rain that whole first month. No phone, no mail, no roof, and if you forgot something, you'll just have to live without it until the road opens in July. Wolves and mountain lions circle the camp at night. Sometimes bears come for your food. Everybody struggles for the first month. You'd see the kid who'd been the hard guy on his high school football team start to sit through lunch with his head in his hands, just licked. Guys who were in the 1,000-pound club at their gym slumped up against a tree all evening, eating peanut butter for dinner because they were too beat to cook. Demanding as the job was, it wasn't really a physical issue. The best workers on the crew were hippie Jesus types with noodle arms who read Marcus Aurelius around the campfire at night. They just took everything as it came, because no matter what, it just kept coming. The Mormon ranch kids. I don't know how those kids came up, but nothing brought them down. One of my favorite things about the military is that in a uniform, nobody can tell how privileged or unprivileged you might have been. It's a total blank slate, and for many, it's humbling to not get to have to wear your social status on your sleeve. On my second ship, there was an E2 who grew up very wealthy, and was an A about it. He wasn't afraid to let us know. He thought that he was better than his peers. There's a stereotype of the enlisted guy who thinks of himself as an officer as a way to pretend that means anything. That's this guy in every way, and he would try to get out of enlisted work because he was going to be an officer, probably even a commanding officer of a ship. So there we were, a few hours into his first deployment, and this dude gets violently seasick. It lasted for days. I don't know if you have ever been around someone who can't open their eyes without yakking, but it's awful. You really feel bad for them. It's hard to watch someone go through. Not with this guy. When I joined the army, guy who had the infantry tattooed on him didn't even last 2 weeks in basic training. He cried and yelled I shouldn't have to get yelled at to do something. A kid in college was a roommate of a friend of mine. He was always bratty and spoiled, but hung out with us as if he were a good friend, and we let him chill with us because sometimes he wasn't bad. Then one day we heard him arguing with his mom on the phone that he needed more money. From the ensuing argument we learned that he had, in less than 1 year, burned through 30 grand that his parents gave him for food and discretionary spending. Mind you, he was not paying for tuition, or lodging, or his car with this money. It was basically just food money, as all those other things were also already covered by his parents. He was calling his mother some really nasty things, and hung up on her. Then his father called and they got in an argument, cussing each other out. At the end of that call he threw his iPhone at the wall and shattered it. This was the original iPhone. Turns out they cut him off, and basically he had to drop out of school and drive back home, out of state, because he couldn't afford to do anything anymore, and of course was too good to work a pleb's job. He added me on Facebook about a year later, and was a late blooming 9/11 truther. Obama was president by this time, and the only thing I ever said to him on FB was a simple reply correcting one fact he was wrong about in his 9/11 conspiracy theory. He then posted like 4 replies in quick succession telling me to open my eyes, and then blocked me. Simple and pure example for my part. There was only one coffee shop on my campus, operating out of the library building, and it was always crowded. You pretty quickly learned that if you wanted coffee before class, you got there 20 minutes early, grabbed a newspaper, I'm old, sue me, and took your time. It was always funny watching incoming freshmen crowd the line 5 minutes before their 8 AM and slowly filter out in despair as they realized there was absolutely no way they were reaching that sweet Sumatra nirvana in time. Cue this little freshman girl dressed in the classic campus shirt, jean shorts, blonde ponytail coming out the bottle cap starter pack, walking up, assessing the line stretching out the door, and boldly deciding to just sorta skip it. Now the baristas were usually pretty cool with people skipping for simple things, dropping down a quarter for some scantrons or a buck for a cookie, anything that didn't require interaction. Not this girl. She caught the barista's attention, while the previous customer was still paying, and went, "Hi, yay, can I get a latte please? Like really quickly, The line starts back there," replied the now slightly confused girl behind the counter. "But I have class," whined the freshman. There was an awkward pause before the barista responded, "You are on a college campus. Are you freaking serious? Why do you think all these people are here?" "Back of the line." "Oh," was the only thing the freshman girl thought to say, as she turned to look at a line full of people staring daggers back at her. She looked not upset or embarrassed, but sort of enraptured by this newfound understanding she's just been imparted. It's like for first time in her entire life she realized that other people were in her way for reasons. It was actually kind of beautiful to watch, like a baby learning to walk for the first time. Better late than never. I was out at a farm with my cousins for a party. It was more like an afternoon barbecue with all the parents sat talking and cooking while the kids ran around playing. Usual lazy afternoon in Africa. So anyway, I was 16 at the time, making me the oldest of the kids, and I will admit that I was all back of the bus to call for school type of cringy teenager and was practicing my casual aloofness. Now there was this German couple there with this absolute monster child, 5, who made it his mission to terrorize all the other kids. The parents of little Adolf sat beaming with delight watching their little ray of sunshine playing with the other kids. Eventually it became apparent that they were going to do nothing about it, and my parents told me to keep my cool and just ignore him, which I did because I didn't want to put my parents in an awkward situation. At some point in the afternoon the kid found one of those plastic toddler toys. You know, the ones where they can sit on it and push themselves around, but it also has a handle at the back that toddlers can use as a walker. So he finds this toy and is running around this lawn full speed, ramming all the other kids. Now I did tell him nicely that it was not good to hurt the other little boys and girls, but he clean ignored me and carried on with his game, giggling and chasing the other kids. He also decided that I was now fair game, and I got rammed in the ankles and Achilles tendon a few times, and I'm fuming. His parents were watching and laughing the whole time. Eventually I am done with this, so I position myself in front of this small ditch, only about 1/4 inch deep and full of grass, and pull out my phone pretending to read messages. I was making myself an easy target for the little brat. He comes charging up behind me, aiming for my heels again. The front wheels go into the little ditch, stopping the walker. The kid was pushing it so fast that his momentum carried him right over the handlebars, right over the push toy and past me, faceplant in the dirt going full scorpion. There was no blood, but he lay there and screamed blue murder. The best part was that the parents watched the whole thing take place, and they and the other parents never suspected that I stood in that exact spot for that exact reason. His parents were kind of pissed that the kid hurt himself while I was watching the kids, but they couldn't say anything, so they just kept the boy close the rest of the day. When the high school principal's daughter, who previously got away with all kinds of garbage behavior, vandalism, dinking, major bullying, got caught vandalizing a lecture hall in uni, she was unceremoniously dumped and banned. Parents whined for months on FB about their poor baby's unfair treatment and the fact that her applications to other unis were being denied. I will admit that I was a bit spoiled growing up, though I didn't think I was a brat. My mom had a maid that came in several times a week. When I went to college, several things were very different for me. I knew to clean up after myself, but cleaning a bathroom was completely new. The biggest shock was laundry. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing or how. I knew I was supposed to use detergent and softener, but I thought any soap would do and didn't knew what softener was. I had no idea how or when to add them either. Reality hit when a campus security guard came in and I asked how much of the dish soap I was supposed to use, and the man started laughing. He did help me get the right soap after and explained how to operate a washer and dryer. I worked with a girl who was completely entitled to everything. She was a pretty blonde girl who was reaching her 40s and not so pretty anymore. She was impossible to be around and talk to. She was always right, had no clue how the real world worked, and always made excuses. I treated her like anyone else I worked with and would not do her work for her. She went to our boss weekly because I was treating her unfairly because I refused to do her work after I got mine done, while she painted her nails and made personal phone calls. She was furious when I was promoted over her. Then we hit the recession of 2008 and I was laid off. She got my job and quit within 3 weeks because she could not handle the pressure.